say that how much it has meant to us to have you here for this occasion. Um, all of the people in the audience are going to be immensely interested in what you're going to say. I have read the speech, of course. It's a speech of breathtaking sweep in the analysis and the support. It's the kind of speech that will be read by many people for a long time.
Well, I hope so.
In years to come, and we intend to make sure it's.
Well, I wasn't going to write it this way. I was going to write something totally different. And then I looked at your agenda and said I was supposed to give a major speech.
Well, it's a major speech, and I wanted to ask you what made you think of writing it now? What is it about this topic that is in your mind?
Well, a good part of it, Jim, is that I'm writing another book, my 12th book, and the final chapter is going to be about the future of finance. And so this kind of subject matter is ideal for that, what we have to do to get the kind of future we want. And so that got to, all of a sudden it sprang into my mind this Burley Means book, The Modern
Yes.
Corporation and Private Property, and I thought, I'm just going to call it The Modern Corporation and the Public Interest, something we don't think nearly enough about it. And I'm a great believer in the public interest. It's not always easy to specify where a corporation, I do my best in the talk to say where that comes out, but it must seem, maybe this is just a moral high ground, but surely a corporation must have a higher obligation than simply to make money. And I feel particularly strongly, I didn't really put it in this final version of the speech, but I think corporations have been so misguided in the way they've treated their workers, the people that are doing all the hard work, and the people that come in and the suits. Sorry about that. I got a suit on too. The suits. I think they do it all themselves. And without these dedicated people, I spent a lot of time with the Vanguard crew to this day. I had 2 meetings yesterday, one with an Award for Excellence winner and one with a Vanguard team that comes to see me. So it's people that make the difference, and that's a big part of my philosophy. So here's a chance to put it all down.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have a sort of Occam's razor, an analytical model in the speech, in which you distinguish trading versus investment as being the modus of ownership of the modern corporation. And what you've done is break new ground here in focusing people on how that's changed since Burl and Means. That they had one Occam's razor, but this is a new one.
Their constituency has changed.
The constituency has changed, and you're arguing in a very futuristic, far-sighted way, I take it, for a change in the legal structure of the corporation that will enable owners to begin to pick up some of the social consequences you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's in a sense legal, this structural change I advocate, but it's something any corporation can do today, and that is we can appoint an independent chairman. Corporations don't like that, as I mentioned in the speech. We can give them a staff. Corporations tend to hate that. And I was running a little corporation. I wouldn't have stood for either of those things, by the way. But this applies, I think I've made it clear, to large public corporations. And when you get kind of an institutional, national public interest, as the acts say, we have to go beyond, what one person thinks. And it will take a long time for people to get accustomed to the idea, and particularly chief executives, these imperial guys, who don't like anybody over them. But if the corporation is to be run in the interest of shareholders, how can the CEO be the one that judges his own pay, for example? It just isn't right. Doesn't make any sense logically. So it will happen. Alas, Jim, it will not happen in my lifetime, but it will happen.
It will happen.
You mark my words, because you'll see it.
I hope so. I hope so. Is there any particular lesson for us as an audit regulator and for auditors in this speech? Anything on your mind about auditing that is...
I touch on it tangentially in the talk, and that is auditors, it just has to be that auditors report to the board rather than the management. And think about it this way. When those Scots who financed our railroad system in the U.S. sent money over here, they sent their own auditors. The owners sent their own auditors. They weren't about to take anything from... I would have been awful careful about Harriman and Pullman and all those guys. That's an important structural reform, which will give the auditors, I think, a chance to be fully independent at a time when the fact that the auditors are paid by the company, we decided a long time ago as a nation that that was the best way to do it rather than have the government do it or something. And but it puts them in a position they don't want to lose the business. They fight for the business. And one of the accomplishments that we made along these lines when I served on the Independence Chairman Board appointed by Arthur Levitt was to take a very strong stand that you can't have an auditor who is also a consultant to the business.
Yeah. And you've made that stick.
Yeah, we made that stick.
You made that work.
And there, the revenues were like 20 to 1.
Yes.
You're paying the auditor $5 million. You were paying the consultant $100 million. I mean, the numbers were very. So we have to. Most important thing is to establish the independence of the auditor. The auditors will all of a sudden become in the driver's seat. And I used to use this example. I didn't put it in this speech, but I thought we had arrived at a time when, if Jack Welch started to push the auditors around, the auditors would look at him and say, "Mr. Welch, if you say one more word, we're going to resign." Imagine what that would have done with the stock. Well, he was able to do that with the stock anyway. But
you're directing them back to their roots, though, back to their origins, and you're telling them that since management can't really do without them at the end.
Yep.
If they simply hold up their side of it in objectivity and working for the investor, they will eventually prevail.
It's interesting to me, Jim. Now, you tell me I'm wrong, but if I'm wrong, but in the long run, all these auditing gimmicks don't work. Things have to balance at the end of the period.
Yeah.
You've got these receivables, and you say they're all on their way in, and they either are or on 10 years later. If that's the case, then we're just focusing on the price of the stock and not the value of the corporation, and that's one of the fundamental things that is in these remarks.
Yes. And the value you are tapping into a very modern area of thought, that value creation is not simple, that value creation may be different from just today's stock price.
Not maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, today's stock price is a joke. I threw in a reference to today's most famous stock price. Is that still in my? That's in my version.
Yes.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. It's there.
What's that about? I mean, there's no value. There's no support underlying intrinsic value to a Bitcoin. None. Now, things can go a long way with no intrinsic value. As Raymond Dodd said, and the 29 madness was as bad as the rush for the gold rush in the Klondike, except that at least there was gold in the Klondike.
Yes, there were assets there. So, well, the Bitcoin has just had its first heist, apparently.
Yeah, I saw that.
Major value and stolen. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But our auditors, you think auditors are going to be prepared to audit positions in Bitcoin when issuers have it? They're not holding it as an asset.
I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, I think under your proposal, if they go beyond the surface in their audit report to shareholders, if a company was heavily engaged in Bitcoin, it would be, I think, an obligation to report that, bring it out.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Disclose. Let the sunlight shine.
That there may not be an auditable value here.
We looked under the rug. We looked under the bed. But it wasn't there.